I was trying to solve this terrible puzzle that confronted me and many other people about how it was that human beings got themselves in such a tangle about what they believed. Such a tangle that we were pointing the ultimate weapons of destruction at one another, which, by the way, we are still doing. And I thought, okay, well, I understand that. We need our belief systems. They orient us. And that means there will be conflict between belief systems, and that can be a catastrophe. And that's being played out everywhere, again, in very many ways. What's the solution to that? Well, one possibility is there's no solution. It's just mayhem all the way around. Could be the case. But it seemed to me, as I delved into it, that the proper solution to that was to live properly as an individual, because you're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful than you think. I mean, God only knows what you are in the final analysis. You're blind to your own weaknesses, but you're also blind to your own strengths. And so then I think, well, if you got your act together, it'd be better for you, and instantly it would be better for your family, assuming they wanted you to get your act together, and not everyone does, and then it would be better for the community. It's like, how far could you take that? If you stopped wasting time, and if you stopped lying, and if you oriented yourself to the highest possible good that you could conceive of, and you committed to that, how much good could you do? Well, I would say, why don't you find out? So that's what I think you should do. You should find out. You don't have anything better to do. And there's nothing in it, as far as I've been able to tell, there's nothing in it but good. So maybe you could sort yourself out so that you wanted nothing but the good. And then maybe you could help make that manifest in the world. And maybe we wouldn't have all these terrible problems then. At least we'd have fewer of them, and that would be a start. So it's the answer to the problem of humanity is the integrity of the individual. That's the answer. So, and states that are predicated on that realization are healthy. So, and states that aren't are doomed to stagnation and catastrophic collapse. And personalities that are predicated on self-tyranny and the tyranny of others are doomed to collapse. So, and then you think, well, what's the barrier? And the barrier is, are you willing to accept the responsibility? And part of the answer to that is, reduce the damn responsibility until it's tolerable. You don't have to fix everything at once. You could just start by fixing the things that you could fix. Or you could even do it more. You could do it with even less self-sacrifice. You could start by fixing only the things that you want to fix. God, you can get a massive way that way. So do it. See what happens. That's what you should have been taught in university right from the beginning. It's like, aim at the highest good. Tool yourself into something that can attain it. And go out there and manifest it in the world. And everything that comes your way will be a blessing. And so all you have to do is give up your resentment and your hatred. I know that's a hard thing to give up because you have plenty of reason for it. You see, the thing about disciplining someone, let's say, is that when you, and I see this very clearly when I'm talking to young people, is that I'm really on the side of the person that wants to do something positive with their life, to make their own life better, because I think that's where you should start. You should start by maximizing the quality of your own life. That's not a selfish thing, or if it is, it's the right kind of selfishness. And that you should figure out how to do that in a way that's of benefit to your friends and your family and your community, and you should take that deadly seriously. And the reason you should do that is because that just makes life better for everyone. And it reduces a fair bit of the misery that would otherwise be part and parcel of life, and it makes everything function smoothly. And one of the things I'm really curious about is what the world would be like if everybody decided to do that, because human beings are really remarkable creatures, and we hobble ourselves very badly with deception and resentment and revenge and the desire to make things worse and arrogance and all those sins, let's say, that that make us deviate from our true path. And our true path should be something like, imagine the noblest aim that you can conceptualize and then sacrifice your life to attempting to attain it. And there's nothing in that that isn't good for everyone. And so, apart from the fact that it requires a lot of responsibility, I just can't see why everyone wouldn't do that. And when I'm talking to young people and, shaking my finger and saying, grow the hell up and get mature and take on some responsibility, I'm not saying that because I'm an enemy of the person. I'm saying it because I'm the best friend of the part of them that would really like to walk in the light. And it's an invitation to walk in the light. And it would be remarkable. This is what we need to do, as far as I'm concerned, not only in the West, but in the world at large, but maybe in the West first, is we have to consciously decide that we're going to do everything we can as individuals to walk in the light, and to regard that as a noble and heroic endeavor, and to make that first and foremost in our lives. And that's what we should be educating young people to do, and they can do that. And so I have dozens of people writing to me and talking to me all the time who are saying the same thing. They're saying, look, I've really been trying to get my act together over the last 6 months. I've been trying not to lie, which is slightly different than trying to tell the truth, right? It's a more humble goal to not lie, because you can tell when you're lying, but you can't necessarily tell when you're telling the truth. And I've been coming up with a plan, and I've been trying to discipline myself, and I've been cleaning up my room, which is like a nice humble act that involves transforming chaos into order. And they write and say, God, things are just working out way better for me. It's like, whoa, do it, man. That's just, you keep that up for 15 years and you'll be unbeatable. And that's what we should be convincing young people to be, is to be unbeatable. And not because that's what they should do or because they're bad if they don't, but because there's nothing better you can possibly do with your limited and suffering bound life than to aim high and sacrifice yourself to the attainment of those goals. So, do you have problems in your life that you're not addressing that you could solve? And the answer is yes. And it's an easy thing to figure out. You sit on your bed one morning and say, okay, there's some things that need to be done that I don't want to do, that I could do, that would make things better by the end of the day. What are they? Well, your conscience will deliver those suckers in no time flat, man. And then you might have to say, okay, well, how do I entice myself into doing a few of those? And if you ask, instead of trying to force yourself to do it like you're a tyrant and a slave at the same time, you can usually negotiate with yourself so that you'll start to sort those things out. Sort them out. Put your house in order. And then move out. Move on. And out. Yes. That's a Freudian slip, by the way. Yeah. So it's important, because the thing is, you have a practice domain, right? There are things that are within your grasp that you could fix. Fix them. And you'll learn, because it's harder than it looks. Fix them, and you'll learn how to fix things, and then something else will beckon as another problem that you could fix. You all have your problems. What does that mean? Like, there's an infinite number of problems in the world. Some of them happen to be yours. Why is that? I don't know exactly. But you have your problems. Great. Solve them. One of the things I learned as a therapist, every therapist has to learn this, is because one of the things you wonder when you're first starting to be a clinician is, how do you not take the catastrophes of your clients home with you? And the answer to that is because it's immoral to. They're not your problems. They're their problems. Like, they're their life. Your problems are your life. You don't want to solve someone else's problems for them, because you take away the deep meaning that's to be found in having them work through the problems on their own. And then you steal the credit. Well, I can help you with that. It's like, well, yeah, maybe, but I don't help you with the next problem then. So in any case, you sort out the problems that are right in front of you, and it will make you grow very, very rapidly. And then you'll be able to sort out more complex problems without making them worse. How does it feel to be viewed as a father figure by many people who grew up without one? Well, I think it's an unbelievable honor. How's that? And that is really what I think. I think it's a tremendous honor, and I'm doing absolutely everything I can to be worthy of that. And I would like to say to all the people out there who grew up without a father, that's really too bad, because you need a father there to encourage you. That's what fathers do, is they encourage, they help make you courageous. And if I can help people develop the capacity to be courageous and to learn to tell the truth and to be responsible, then that's great. I can't imagine a better outcome for me. And so if people are willing to help me play that role and to use what I've been teaching to guide them in that manner, then hooray. I couldn't possibly imagine a better outcome than that. When you know you should do something. I mean, everyone has this experience, I believe. Perhaps you would be willing to put up your hands if this experience is foreign to you. Okay? It's part of you telling you you should do something. And it's hard to do it, effortful, and maybe you're afraid of it. And so you don't do it. You just procrastinate, right? And so how do you feel about that? Good? I mean, so what, you feel that you're betraying yourself. Your anxiety actually gets worse, not better, even though, you can put it off moment to moment, but that doesn't help because every time you put it off, the anxiety just grows a little bit. You're not proud of yourself. You have a sense that you're making things more chaotic than they should be. And if you do that long enough, and I'm sure many of you have had that experience, if you do that long enough, if that becomes habitual, things will get so stormy around you that you'll fall right into the chaos, into the watery chaos, and maybe you'll drown. So it's not a very good idea to run from your destiny, let's say, whatever that might be. And you need a destiny, you need a place to aim at, because that's what gives your life meaning. And you need meaning in your life because life is hard. So, you need something to buttress yourself against that. So anyways, they wake Jonah up, and Jonah says, it's probably my fault because I'm running away from something I'm supposed to do, and God isn't very happy about that, so why don't you just throw me overboard? And the crew isn't very happy about that, but the waves are really starting to come up, and Jonah's pretty insistent that he's the cause of the problem, and so they draw lots, and Jonah is chosen, and so they decide to toss him into the ocean, and immediately everything's calm. So he's a center of chaos because he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Fine. Well, then a whale comes up and swallows him. And then he's in the whale for 3 days. That's a weird thing. The whale, that's the whale that Geppetto's in. That's a dragon. It's that thing that you have to go out there and conquer to get something of value. Now, when you've made an error, when you've fallen off the pathway, when you've deviated from what you know you should do, it produces a state of internal chaos and worry and concern. You're thrust into the unknown. You're thrust into unknown territory and chaos. You don't know what to do. And that's often symbolized by the encounter with a monster, like a dragon. Something that lives under the water. And I think the reason for that is, as far as I've been able to tell, is that human beings, because we've been prey animals for forever, we have a system in our mind that's a threat predator detection system. That's the thing that makes little kids think about monsters in the dark, right? Because, well, there is monsters in the dark. Parents always say, well, there's no monsters in the dark. It's like, that's not true. The dark is full of monsters. There might not be any in your room right at that moment, but that doesn't mean there aren't monsters in the dark. And crimes take place, criminals don't get up at 6 in the morning and have breakfast and go rob a bank. They do that sort of thing at night. People do the things that are fit for the night in the night. And lots of predators are nocturnal, and you can't see very well in the dark. And kids aren't stupid, They've evolved to stay pretty damn close to the fire. When you're feeling terrible, you don't say, well, I'm feeling up. You say, I'm feeling down. Well, why is that? Well, down is worse. I guess you're flat on the ground when you're down, or you're in a hole or something like that. You're hiding in a hole. It's down. And you're threatened by something. Maybe you're threatened by your own inadequacy, that might be part of it. Maybe that's partly what you imagine as a monstrous force, because your proclivity towards procrastination and your weakness of character is part and parcel of why you happen to be in the underworld. And that's the underworld, the mythological underworld. That's where you go when things fall apart. And if you understand that, if you know that that's what that means, then you have one of the keys that opens up ancient stories to you, and you understand things. Your life can be organized, going very well, and then something comes up, and poof, everything changes. Some axiom that you were living by, and it might be the existence of a partner, it might be a job, it might be your health, any of those things, gone. And you go somewhere when that happens. You go somewhere. It's a state of being. You're still in the same world, but it's not the same at all anymore. Everything about it is different. It's all negative and dark, and you don't know what to do. You're confused. And so, what do you do down there in the underworld when things have fallen apart? Especially if it's the worst possible case scenario and you realize that you actually had something to do with your demise. That's really annoying, when something bad happens to you, and then you grind yourself into bits trying to figure out what the hell happened, and then you realize that, well, you were playing a causal role. Now, sometimes you're so depressed you assume you're playing a causal role, and you weren't. It's not easy to figure out by any stretch of the imagination, and it isn't that everyone who does something terrible is at fault for it, but sometimes you find that you were off the path somehow, and maybe even that you knew it and you didn't attend to it, and that's why all of this hit the fan. And so then down there in that chaos, you decide that you're going to do what you're supposed to do instead. And then maybe you get to rise up again, renewed, if you're lucky, and then you can go fix the city. And that's what this story's about. And that's why I picked the image to represent the course, because really what happens, you see, with the psychoanalysts, the road to health, if you're not doing well, which means that as you act in the world, you're not getting what you want. There's something wrong with the match between your presuppositions and your actions, habitual, and the way the world is responding to you. And so it's not turning out for you. And the question is, well, what can you do about that? And one answer might be to examine yourself for presuppositions and action patterns that are not serving you well, and to find out what they are and what to do about them. And maybe some of that is, maybe you're not moving forward because of fear, and maybe that fear is grounded in terrible experiences that you had in the past that you've never been able to understand. And maybe one of the ways of gluing yourself back together and expanding your personality so that you could in fact live properly in the world is to go back to those terrible events and untie them and straighten them out and understand them and drop them. And that's what psychotherapy is about, in large part. Psychoanalytic, behavioral, doesn't matter. What are you afraid of? What are you avoiding? What are you failing to develop? Maybe from fear, maybe from avoidance, God only knows, maybe from disgust. How can you get over it? How can you reclaim those parts of yourself? So the question is, why do people pursue rewards that don't produce this resonance? They don't have a value hierarchy. So Pleasure Island, it's a good example. Those kids that were brought there were lost. So they didn't have anywhere to go. They didn't have an identity. So they default to local pleasure. And that's better than none. Although the problem with local pleasure, well, as the narrative made clear, is that you better look out if you're impulsive, because it's going to kick back on you hard. And the reason is, you're only considering the immediate time frame. And the problem is that things propagate across all the time frames. And so just because something works really well this second, cocaine, for example, doesn't mean that it's a tenable solution to the class of all problems. So usually, often, people pursue local pleasure because that's the best they can imagine. It's the best they've been taught. They don't see another alternative. So it can be ignorance. It can be they don't want to adopt the responsibility, because part of the problem with working at every level of the hierarchy simultaneously is that it's like dancing to a very complex waltz, let's say. You have to be paying attention to a very large number of things simultaneously and doing things right. It requires responsibility. And so, you know, it's a pain. It's a weight. Part of the reason people drink alcohol is to get rid of their responsibility. I mean, that's, you know, you hear people drink because they have problems. It's like, yeah, no. Some people drink because they're anxious, and alcoholics drink because they're in withdrawal. But young people drink because they're sick and tired of being responsible, because it's annoying. It's like, so I'll drink enough, I won't care about the medium to long-term consequences, because alcohol, that's exactly what alcohol does. It doesn't make you ignorant of the medium to long-term consequences, but it makes you not care about them. And partly it's because it dampens anxiety. So it dampens anxiety, it leaves your positive emotion circuits intact, so then you can go out there and do stupid fun things. And that's a party, really. Let's go do stupid fun things. You know, when you hear people like Joseph Campbell say things like follow your bliss, you know, and so that sounds pretty easy. You want to develop your personality, just do what you love. You know, it's a corruption of Carl Jung's thinking, because Jung would say, well, follow what you're interested in, it'll take you somewhere you really don't want to go, and then maybe you'll learn something. So, and that's a whole different proposition. So, human beings, if you talk about a human being, you tend to use something that's like a story. And when you recount your own being, you tend to use something like a story, and that sort of begs the question, you know, does that mean in fact that your experience is either a story or something like a story? One of the things Jung said, I really like this, is you should figure out which story you're living, because you're living a story, and it might be a tragedy. And so, you know, you want to find out, because if it's a tragedy, you don't come to a very good end. Another thing Jung said was, this is also worth thinking about, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. And so what Jung would say is that if you're living out a tragedy, the tragedy has you. You don't have it. And if you can figure out what the tragedy is that has you in its grip, then you have a fighting chance of escaping from it into a more pleasing plot. But it's no easy thing. You know, so if you're one of those people to whom the same terrible thing keeps happening over and over, after the third time, approximately, you might ask yourself, you know, is this the world or is this me? There's an absolute moral stance there, and everyone recognizes it. And I also think it's the key to success. And I would also say it's very much akin, in a strange way, like the person who is the master at being invited to play the largest possible number of games is also the same person. I haven't quite figured out the precise relationship between these two, is also the same person that goes out forthrightly to conquer the unknown before it presents itself as the enemy at the door. They're the same thing. And it's a critique in some sense also of the idea of the patriarchy. I know, because the patriarchy is this dominant, oppressive hierarchy that everyone's embedded in. And, you know, the social constructionist, social justice warrior, postmodernist types think about that as a social construction. It's like, how about no? That's just wrong. Lobsters have hierarchies. That's 1/3 of a billion years ago. Okay, that's not a social construction. It's part of being itself. And if you only see a hierarchy as power and tyranny, then you're looking at the world wrong. Like, it's true that hierarchies can be tyrannical and dominant. Mm-hmm. And a degenerated hierarchy is nothing but tyranny. But in a functional society, the hierarchy is actually the structure of the society, and you're actually protected within it. Well, then how you relate to that hierarchy is very important, but that's part of personal development. That's part of standing upright, you know. And then people in the hierarchy think, oh, well, you're someone who could do good things for the hierarchy. Let's promote you. Yeah. You know, like, men don't struggle for power. That isn't what men do. Not if they're civilized. They size each other up and elect the competent to lead them. And they do that at every level of society. Like, I tell a story in there about, might be later in another chapter, it doesn't matter. I worked in a rail crew in southern Saskatchewan. They're rough guys, like a lot of them had been in prison, you know. And when you first came onto the rail crew, you got a stupid nickname and people teased you. And I remember this one kid called Lunch Bucket. That was his nickname because he came to the rail crew with a lunch bucket that looked like his mom had packed it. That was a bad idea. You bring your damn lunch in kind of a ratty paper bag.
Right.
You don't make too big a thing out of it.
And it's dirty and smelly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like you're not pronouncing your status with your lunch bucket.
You don't have a Barbie lunchbox.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
So they named him Lunch Bucket, which he wasn't very happy about.
Yeah.
Well, that was a mistake. He should have taken it with a smile. And then he was always peevish and irritable. And if you asked him to do something, he'd whine. And so, this was soon after I joined the rail crew. Well, soon, there's about 60 men on this crew. It stretched out about a quarter of a mile down the tracks. Soon, anonymous harassers were throwing pebbles at him during work. We had hard hats on, and so the game was, let's see if we can hit a lunch bucket in the hard hat with a pebble.
Anonymous.
Yeah, well, because you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And that was purposeful because he couldn't take a joke. It's like, well, let's see if he can take this joke. Clunk, and everybody, And then he just got more and more peevish, and the pebbles got bigger and bigger. And a week later, Lunch Bucket was gone, having not learned anything from the experience. But the men were testing him out. It's like, can you take a joke? Can you be useful? Can you at least be amusing? Is there something worthwhile about you? It's like, no. It's like, okay, well then you're out of here, because you never know when we actually might need to depend on you.
The nicknames that are in the SEAL teams, I can't with good conscience repeat them.
I'm sure that's
because
true.
they're just horrible names. Yeah. But there's a camaraderie around that, and there's also as I was reading what you had written about these guys working on a railway
crew. Yeah.
There's a test. It's a test.
Yeah.
It's a test to see where you're at,
That's
what
right.
you're made of.
That's right. Can we rely on you? Can you tolerate a little bit of irritation? If the answer to that is no, it's like, well, maybe we don't want you around then, because some irritating things are likely to come down the pipe.
Yeah, and it's not just to me it proves if you've got someone that can take it, right? It's not just that they can take some random joking insults. They can take it. They can take it.
Yeah, that's what you're testing for. It's like, can you take it? Lunch Bucket couldn't, right? Because people would laugh at his lunch bucket and he'd get all upset. It's like, well, you have a stupid lunch bucket. It's like, your mom packed it. How about it? You laugh at yourself. Yeah, my mom packed this. I know it's kind of stupid. That would have been the end of it. He would have just had to say that.
Yeah.
It's like, but I didn't want to hurt her feelings. It's like, oh, okay, fine. You got your stupid lunch bucket. But no, he couldn't handle that. So yeah, it was horrible and comical to watch at the same time, because the level of, and people have written me about that, and they said, oh, poor lunch bucket. It's like, because they're all compassionate. I think, no, not poor lunch bucket. It's like, clue the hell in, buddy. You had your chance. That was a desirable job, that rail crew job in the summer, because it was high paying, and they weren't easy to come by, those jobs. And so the fact that he got hired onto that crew was a real opportunity for him. You could make a pile of money in the summer at working on the rail crew. And all you had to do was take some ribbing with good grace, not suck up to the management too badly, and not have other people do your job. That was all. That was all you had to do. But he couldn't do that, and so he got run off. And it was like, grow the hell up, buddy. These guys, when 100 people are teasing you, then probably they're not wrong.
Yeah, when you are getting teased like that as well, when you stop reacting, it's no longer fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it also gives you an opportunity to tease back. It's like, because you can show your wit. And one of the things that working class guys in particular, which is one of the things I really loved about working class jobs, is they're always looking for some humor. So it's like, if person A is teasing person B, that's kind of comical. But if person B comes back with a good comeback, it's like, that's even better, So I think that's a lot of how those jobs are rendered tolerable, right? They're hard, dirty jobs.
Right.
Dishwasher's a good example. That's not dangerous, although cooking is you got to watch your step. I got burned a lot when I was cooking. But what makes those jobs not only tolerable, but even desirable, is that you can develop a tremendous amount of camaraderie around them. I've never really experienced that at a professional level job. That just doesn't happen the same way. And there's a real loss in that. So it's fun to be part of a team that's doing, grubby, hands-on things and having a ridiculously, entertaining, vicious, cruel, and evil time while you're doing it. That's very entertaining. I had an experience with that about 3 years ago. I'd put my videos up online, and people kept saying that I sounded like Kermit. And I thought, well, one person said it, and I thought, well, whatever. But then like 5 people said it, and I thought, oh my God, like this Kermit thing. So then I went and listened to Kermit, and I thought, oh no, it's like really, I really sound like Kermit, you know. And so then, well, then I started to play with it a little bit, you know. I used the puppet, and when I went to speak to university students, and I made frog jokes, and then I made a couple of videos that sort of featured me as a frog. And I mean, it's crazy, right? It's ridiculous, but the teasing never got mean because of that, you know.
Yeah.
And the same things happened online to a larger degree as people keep making memes of me. Like, and there's lots of them. There's way too many to even keep track of. And I was watching that happen, and I thought, okay, this is a good thing because there's humor, and wherever there's humor, that's a good thing. And they're making fun of me, but it's gentle. You know, most of it was pokey, you know, like, well, you sound like this damn puppet. What do you think of that? It's like, well, if I had to pick someone to sound like, it probably wouldn't be a puppet. But if it had to be a puppet, Kermit's not a bad one. It could be a lot worse. Like, it could be Miss Piggy. That could have been that, you know, so thank God that didn't happen. But the memes have never got vicious because, you know, I'll post them if they're funny and satirical, and then they won't get vicious because they don't have to. It's like, can we poke fun at you? It's like, yeah, please do. And the more the better, really, because that'll also help keep my feet on the ground and keep me awake. And plus it's funny. And like, one of the things about life is that a sense of humor, that's a good thing to arm yourself with, because sometimes you just don't have anything other than that. If you're going to face a threat, if you face it voluntarily, what happens is your body activates itself for exploration and mastery. But if you face it involuntarily, same size threat, then you revert to prey mode, and you're frozen, and that's way more stressful. It's way harder on your body, and so it's better to keep your eye open and watch for emergent threats, because you all know, you know, what you're not doing quite right and where your life is likely to unravel. You all have a sense of that, and the best thing to do is to not ignore that, to pay attention to it, to watch it, and to take corrective action early, and then, you know, you stay on top of things, and things, your little trip to the underworld might be a few minutes long instead of a catastrophe that produces post-traumatic stress disorder, knocks you out for 4 or 5 years, and maybe you never recover. So, and that's, you know, that's what these kind of symbolic representations mean. Those are states of being that indicate being devoured, and you can be devoured by your own unconscious. Jesus, that happens all the time. What does that mean? Well, you know, and it's an autonomous thing in some sense, you know, like if you get depressed or if you get really anxious, you don't have any control over that. It's like it sweeps up over you and pulls you down. Why down? Well, down is where you go when you're sad. You don't go up. Man, I'm up today. Oh, that's too bad. No, it's man, I'm down today. And well, that's partly this, and it's partly because this is subordinate, and it's partly because down is closer to the ground and farther from the sky. Like, there's all sorts of reasons you're feeling down rather than up. Up is where you're aiming, right? You aim up.
We don't care for the things we're doing. We're not helping each other is the most important part. And the residual impact is that we are unfulfilled by the work that we do. And when we're unfulfilled by the work that we do, we focus on the details. And when we focus on the details, we retract from each other. When we retract from each other, we feel lonely. And when we feel lonely, cancer goes up, heart disease goes up, diabetes goes up. In other words, by going to work, we're killing ourselves. Literally. There's another study that was released not that long ago that says that parents who work late, the negative impact that it has on their children is little to none. They may feel guilty as parents, but the negative impact that it has on the raising of their children is little to none. However, parents who come home from jobs they hate or don't love, their kids are more likely to be bullies at school. And now you think about the bullying epidemic we have in America, right? Where there's this disturbing number of young children who are killing themselves, suicides, because of bullies. The problem is not the schools, and the problem isn't even the parenting. The problem is the jobs the parents have. This is the importance and this is the power of the work that we do and the places we go to work, right? Most of us, I mean, like if you listen to the unemployment statistics, they say, you know, we're all-time high, record high, 9 to 10% unemployment, right? And people go, oh my God, that's terrible. And I hear that number and I go, well, that means 91% still have a job, right? Now, granted, we want to get that employment number up, but that means 91% are still going to work. The question is, how many of them are coming home fulfilled by the work that they do, and how many of them are waking up inspired to go back to work the next day? If we don't love our works, we don't look out for each other. And if we don't look out for each other, we feel lonely. If we don't feel lonely, all these negative things happen. So what example can I share with a creative audience about how to change this? The United States Marine Corps. I had the great honor last week of spending a week with the Marines. I spent a couple days at Camp Lejeune, and then I went for a few days to Paris Island to watch them go through boot camp. And this is it's a remarkable, remarkable human experiment that they're doing. And even though they know what works, they don't know why it works, but they don't need to know why because they know that it works, right? But what's happening is they're taking a group of strangers, people who don't know each other, who are showing up and within a very, very short period of time, learn to trust each other so much that they would give their lives for each other, right? And we know, anyone who's ever worn a uniform knows that no one runs into battle for God and country. It doesn't happen. It's for the guy to the left of me and the guy to the right of me. That's the reason they do what they do, right? And these sort of remarkable stories of heroism where people rush into very, very dangerous situations to save others. And they always ask the question, why did you do it? Why would you risk your life? Why would you put yourself at risk for them? And the answer is always the same, because they would do it for me. In other words, what gives them the confidence to put themselves at great risk is the knowledge that someone would do the same for them. We would put ourselves at great risk for our companies if we knew that our companies would put themselves at great risk for us. But they don't. So we don't. Now, one of the things that's remarkable about the Marines, and if you go read, and you know, this is the most, I asked these young, and they're 21, 22 years old, some of these lance corporals, the grunts, you know, the guys, the infantry. I mean, this is the lowest of the low, the ones we actually send into battle, the front lines. And I asked them, are you misunderstood in America? And they said, yes, unanimously, they all nodded. I said, what do people think of you? And one stood up and says, they think we're baby killers. I said, how does it feel? He says, it hurts. And when I say, well, tell me a story then that captures to you what it means to be a Marine, the feeling you have of being a Marine, tell me a story that captures it. And I expected to hear stories of, I took a hit and somebody saved me, or I ran into a firefight and pulled somebody. I expected these stories of heroism. Not a single story like that came out. Now, I'm sure those stories exist, but those aren't the stories they told me that capture what it means to be a Marine. One of the stories they told me was a young boy in Afghanistan who would come around every morning and sell kebabs to the Marines. And then one day he showed up and he was all beaten up. And he didn't go to his parents for help and he didn't go to his friends to help. He came to the Marines for help because he trusted them more than anyone else. They told me a story that captured how they feel of a village that had been overrun by the Taliban, and the residents of the village couldn't go home because they would be killed by the Taliban, and so they were just living by the river. The problem was winter was coming, and one of the elders came to the Marines, knocked on the door and said, I need you to come down to the river and kill us. And the Marine said, what are you talking about? He says, if we go back home, we'll be killed by the Taliban, and if we stay out there, we're going to die slow deaths this winter. It's easier if you just come and kill us, please. The Marines overran the Taliban village, pushed the Taliban out. A year later, they went back to this village and people were playing volleyball. These were the stories they told me that capture what it means to be a Marine. They believe in doing good for others, and the fulfillment they get when they put themselves at risk so that others may prevail is overwhelming. This is not unique to the Marine Corps. This is all human beings. The feeling of fulfillment comes from doing something for another. The feeling from fulfillment comes from the exertion of time and energy for someone else. If you are walking to work and you throw a few pennies in a cup, and you come to work and you say to your friends, hey guys, I gave $1 to somebody homeless this morning. What are your friends going to say? Yeah, good, right? I gave $20 to somebody homeless. They'd be like, good for you, right? What if you come in the morning and you say, hey, I gave up my Saturday and I went and painted a school in the inner city? People go, whoa, cool, wow, cool. And all of a sudden, not only are they inspired to do something good themselves, but the feeling that you have persists. The amazing thing is that when we do good for others, it actually inspires others to do good for others. This is provided for us primatologically, anthropologically. It's all part of the survival of the species. You know, sex feels good so that we'll do it, so we can procreate and perpetuate the species. But we're social animals, and so we have to provide for the fact that we'll maintain strong bonds and build cultures, right? Because that's what humans do. We're cultural animals. And so when we do good for others and we look out for those in our tribe, we look out for those in our group, it actually feels good. Biologically, it releases oxytocin. This chemical that's released when you do good for others is released, and it makes you feel good. And the amazing thing is the more oxytocin you have in your body, the more you want to do good for others. The problem is we've replaced this feeling, the exertion of time and energy, with digital communications. We've replaced it with headphones. We've replaced it with money, right? Think about the invention of money, right? It used to be, money, it used to be like you go to someone's house, you cook them dinner, and the deal was they'll do the dishes. Time and energy, exchange for time and energy. And someone said, I'll give you an IOU, right? Someone says, I don't feel like doing the dishes, so I'm going to give you an IOU that I promise to do them another day, right? And that's what money is. It is the promise for future goods or services. The promise of future goods and services. In other words, we've replaced our own time and energy with promises for someone else to do it another day, right? In other words, there's no exertion of time and energy. And so the feeling people get is that I did something for you and you did nothing for me. You replaced it with a piece of paper, with an IOU, with a promise for future goods and services. The way we find fulfillment is by doing good for others. So how do the Marines do it? How do you get people to do good for others? We all know this. Intellectually, we know that it's good to do good for others, but why don't we do it then? Why don't we do it? And what the Marines learned is something that I completely did not expect. They can't just yell at these guys to help each other. That's not what happens. There's a few things that they have to do first. So we all have heard of the obstacle course, right? The Marines have a thing called the obstacle course, and this is where they build anaerobic strength and aerobic strength, muscle strength, and it's timed and all of this good stuff. They have another course called the confidence course, and it's never timed. And most of the obstacles on this course cannot be completed by yourself. They must be completed in teams. You have no choice. That's just how it's designed. And what they say is the first 2 weeks of boot camp, everybody's there to outdo each other and prove that they're strong. Just kind of like when we start in a job, we want to show how great we are, we'll work a little harder, we'll do good work, look how good my design is, right? It's all about us and how good we are, right? But they keep putting them in situations where they can't do things by themselves. And what starts to happen very slowly, they said after about 2 weeks, they start cheering for each other. Now they get in trouble when they do, but they start cheering for each other. And then before too long, you see them organically start helping each other. And what happens is if there's one person who's weak and refuses to help the others, or even if there's one person who's strong, who's, I was the star college athlete, and they get to the end of every obstacle and they just stand there and wait for everybody to finish and they don't help each other, what starts to happen is organically the group starts to ostracize that person. Organically, they get ostracized until they learn that the only way that they will get through this thing, the only way they will survive boot camp, is if they ask for help because they have no option. The problem is, no one will help them until they're willing to help another. It's the deal we have to make. It's called vulnerability and risk. We have to take the risk to make ourselves vulnerable. Yes, you might do something for someone else and they may not do something back for you. That's the risk you run. That's the risk you run. It's not about giving everything to them and sort of huge, big, overwhelming risk. It's about little things and little things. It's like going on a date, right? It's like if I went on a date with somebody, I came home and I said, after one date I said, I'm marrying her. And people are like, what are you, nuts? I'd be like, I'm in love. They're like, but this is crazy. I'm like, I know, I'm in love, She feels the same way. We both know it's nuts, right? Now you know that you're going to be like, go on a couple more dates, right? We know instinctively that the strong bond that needs to be created first takes more than a week, right? We know that, right? But if I've been dating somebody for 7 years and we haven't, married, you'd be like, dude, what is wrong, right? In other words, we know that it takes more than 7 days and we know that it takes less than 7 years. The problem is, we don't know how long it takes. Somewhere in the middle. All human bonds are the same. Like when you show up at work, when you show up for the first time, when you're new, don't expect that people will look out for you and they won't expect you to look out for them in 7 days. It won't happen. But if you've been working at a job for a few years and you don't have the absolute confidence that if you turn your back you will not get stabbed, you can rely on somebody, you can give them something, nothing will go wrong, you will share the credit, no one will throw you under the bus. If you don't have that in a few years, something's wrong. Something's wrong. I don't know how long it takes, but I know that's more than a week and I know it's less than 7 years. And the Marines fundamentally understand that before anyone is willing to put themselves out for another, they have to have self-confidence. Real self-confidence. You have to be confident in yourself and your own ability before you're willing to help another. If you're insecure at all about your own ability, it's sort of a paradox, right? How can I overcome my confidence, my self-confidence? And we all have ego issues at all times, we all do, right? But if I'm not confident in myself, I won't help another. It's a paradox because then we need someone to look out for us before we're willing to help our peers, right? This is what management is supposed to do. The drill instructors, the school, they're there, our parents, they are there for one reason and one reason only, to help us feel strong and good about ourselves. But look at the way we talk to each other. Look, a budget's been cut. And so what do you get told? I need you guys to do more with less. Right? That's what we're told. Hey guys, I need you guys to do more with less. That's what we're told by our clients, by our bosses, by our parents. This is what we're told, right? That's like your parents telling you when you're young, I know you're stupid. Figure it out. Right? You're not as smart as the other kids. What do you want me to do? Right? It's the exact same thing. I need you to do more with less. Right? What we need to be telling people is, I need you to do more with what you have. Right? You have capacity, you have strength, you have talent, you have ability. I need you to do more with what you have. We don't celebrate what we've got. We criticize for what we don't have. This is the responsibility of management, to take us under their wing and help us understand our own value to ourselves. Close your eyes and think back to high school. And think of that one teacher who took you under their wing and cared for you and looked after you and helped you realize that you are capable of more than you thought you were. And you probably are the person you are today in some part because of that person. Right? Do you have that name? What's the name? Tell me the name. Tell me the name of the teacher. Okay, give me the name. Okay, I can point to anybody and you can tell me that name. Now tell me the names of all the other teachers you had that day. Can't remember them, can you? This is the power of those who teach us confidence. We will literally carry their names around with us for the rest of our lives. Wouldn't you want to be that person? Wouldn't you want to be the person that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, I can do this exercise with somebody and they will tell me your name? This is the power of helping others realize their own strengths. This is what management and leadership is supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be caring for us and helping us realize our own value. And by the way, if you have anybody who reports to you or works for you, your responsibility is not to make them meet the deadline. Your responsibility is not to make sure that they do as you say. Your responsibility is to make sure that they understand their own strengths, their own value, and that they are way, way more talented than they think they are. And the only way they will learn that is if you put them in situations in which they can fail. And you hold them and you support them and you give them talent and you give them skills and you give them education and you watch their backs, and if they fall over, you encourage them to get back up, and if they fall over, you encourage them to get back up, and if they fall over, you encourage them to get back up until they figure it out themselves. It's called confidence. It's your responsibility to help others find it, and it's others' responsibility to help you find yours. And the amazing thing is, as soon as you start feeling confident in your own ability, you naturally help each other. That's what happens. It's called trust. In the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, we are willing to give bonuses to people who will sacrifice others so that we may gain. We have it backwards. And then we complain about how we don't love our jobs, and we complain about how the work is suffering, and we complain about how budgets are being cut, and we complain. And the first thing we do is blame each other and become more selfish and worry about my pay and my benefits and my this. And this is what happens. When we are unfulfilled, we look at the metrics and we say they're not good enough. When we are fulfilled, we don't care about the metrics. This is why when you have a job you love and you get a call that says, I'll offer you tons more money and great benefits, you're like, I'm not interested, I'm not interested, I'm not interested. I'm very happy here, but we'll give you more. That's not the reason I'm here. I'm here because I love it. I'm here because I care for the people I work with, and I'm here because the people I work with care for me. This is the world I imagine. This is the world I imagine. And here's the great thing. If you take little risks, I'm not talking about big things, little things. If you start doing little things for each other, the amazing anthropological response is other people will start doing little things for others too. I was walking down the street 2 days ago, and a guy's backpack was open and a whole bunch of paper fell out as he was walking down the street. And I happened to be behind him, and so my friend and I just we were in mid-conversation, and in mid-conversation, we never even stopped talking. We just bent down, sort of helped him gather his papers, hand them back to him, sort of pointed out that his book bag was his backpack was unzipped, and he said thanks, and we walked on. It was like no big deal, right? We get to the end of the street, and we stand we're waiting to cross the street. We're still talking, we haven't stopped talking. And the guy in front of us turns to us and says, I saw you help that guy. That was really cool. But here's what's great about that. The guy will go do something for someone else simply because he saw us bend down and pick up paper for someone else. He will actually go do something for someone else because of it. Right? He won't give to charity because he sees me put $1 in a cup. But he will actually help someone because he saw someone also help someone. Little things. Hold a door open for someone. Say thank you to the person who holds the door open for you. Smile to the barista. Little things. Put your foot in the subway when the door is closing so someone who's running will make it. Hit the open at the elevator. Don't go, or pretend you didn't see. That's the best one. Oh, I would have if I saw. Sorry, right? Do it. A little time and a little energy. And you'll find around work that people give a little time and a little energy back to you. And you'll give a little more time and a little more energy. You go for a coffee with someone. Then you go for a 2-hour coffee. Then you go for a coffee and a lunch. Then you go for a lunch and a dinner. Then you go for a dinner and a movie. And then you sleep over. And then you sleep over 2 nights. And then you go on holiday together. And eventually you get married. Right? It's slow. It takes time. And we can't rush it. If when we rush it, it's all fake. Do things for others and watch how much others do for you. Go get yourself a cup of coffee from the coffee machine in the morning. Make one for someone else. It takes a little extra time. It takes a little extra energy. That's the point. That's the point. And here's the best part. You will feel so good at the end of the day. So good. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a great question. How do you convince someone, so what are the metrics? How do you convince a skeptical audience of this trust metric? You don't. You don't, right? You can't twist anybody's arm to do something that they don't want to do. And, the law of diffusion, which I obey, as much as I can, which is you don't need the majority, you need those people who believe what you believe. In other words, when you do some nice things for people, they may not do something nice back because they may be, we live in a world in which you do something for somebody, they think you want something from them, right? That's unfortunately the society we've created. But that's the risk that we keep taking. I'm not saying you should keep doing it for somebody who keeps doing nothing and keeps sort of, crapping on you because of it. Then at some point you have to be like, all right, my bad, right? And you back off. I don't believe in helping everyone. I do not believe in it, right? This is not, let's do good for everyone on the planet. That's not what I'm talking about. Mother Teresa, who's the poster child for giving selflessly to all who need, at the end of her life started questioning the existence of God and, by the way, hated her life. Serious, okay? In other words, giving to others unabashedly is actually self-destructive. It doesn't help, right? And it's just like going on dates with people you don't like doesn't mean you'll eventually click and marry, right? There's only one machine that I found that really accurately measures trust better than any other sort of metric. It's called the human being. It's really good at it, right? And so those feelings you get, trust them in one way or the other. You know, it's the little risks, it's the butterflies, it's the unsure. You know, it's the backwards and it's the dance, it's dating, it's the dance, it's the nerves. Like it's that. So if there are cynical bastards at your office who don't get it, ignore them. Don't worry about it, because eventually you'll get enough, and those people either come along or leave, or be pushed out. You know, ostracized. Remember, when the group starts helping each other, they ostracize the ones who refuse to help, whether they're strong or whether they're weak. They get ostracized until they learn that they cannot survive without the help of others, and they learn that the only way others will help them is if they help the others, right? The order matters. The order matters. I just thought of something that sort of is pervasive in our sort of, you know, digital world. The order matters. You know, sort of speak honestly about what you want, right? If you are don't do things for people when you want something from them. Just ask them what you want from them. And I'll give you one little example. It's a funny little example. We've all received emails that go like this. Dear Simon. Well, you wouldn't get an email to Dear Simon, but I would. Dear, insert your name, right? Dear Simon, haven't seen you in years. Hope you're well. Congratulations on all you've been doing. It's really amazing. We should get coffee sometime. If you could do me a favor, if you could vote for me on this website, I'm hoping to win, you know, some $1,000 prize for my design, blah, blah, blah. Hope you're well, talk to you soon, Kenny, right? We've all received an email like that. And how do we respond to it? Right? Now, what happens if you get the same email that goes like this? Dear Simon, I'm hoping you could vote for me on this website. I'm trying to win some $1,000 prize for my design. I haven't seen you in years. I hope you're really well. Congratulations on all that you've been doing. We should get a coffee sometime. Thanks, Kenny. Totally different. In other words, when we know why you're emailing and it comes first, it has a remarkable impact. We know that all those pleasantries are just buttering us up to get to what they want, right? But if you come right out with what you want, we're actually very grateful for the pleasantry, right? It's the same thing in human interaction. Don't give someone a cup of coffee if you need a favor back. Just ask them for the favor. It builds trust. I can't trust you every time you do something nice for me. I think you want something from me. I won't trust you. And this is what companies do to us, right? Well, we did this for you. Why won't you do this for us? That's not how it works. Generosity, bending down to pick up the papers, holding the door open for someone, is expecting nothing in return. Ever. You do not give. You know, this is what happens in new business, right? New business is built on relationships. And so we build the relationship until we're comfortable to ask for the business. In other words, you were only befriending me till the point you felt that I would let down my guard and you could ask me for something. The whole time you were just waiting for that time. It doesn't work that way. If you actually want to build relationships, you build relationships without wanting anything. And that's how you build trust. You want to know why the Marines gave me this incredible access? I mean, literally, they said, Simon, anything you want to see, you got it. Anything you want to do, you got it. You can go. We went past signs that said, no observers, no civilians beyond this point. I'm like, can I take pictures? They're like, go ahead. You should see some of the pictures. They're unbelievable, right? I'm like right in there, Marines coming at me. We went out to the Crucible, and they're all like, you know, they're like rolling in the dirt and like, you know, going under barbed wire, and I'm like, I'm not joking either. They're like, you know, unprecedented access that journalists would be jealous of. Do you know why they gave it to me? Because in all the time that I've been visiting with Marines and having meetings with them, I've never asked for anything. I don't want anything, and I don't have anything to sell. I just keep showing up and say, what do you need? How can I help? And at some point they said, when I called them and said, I need a little favor, because they know I haven't been waiting for the favor. It's the time now that I have a little favor. They go, absolutely, whatever you need. It's called human relationship. Companies don't do business with companies. People do business with people. You know, your company didn't win IBM as a client. Somebody who likes somebody said, we'll hire you. And if they didn't like you, they're just, you know, they're playing roulette. Well, we're betting that, you know, this will work out. Those are the weak relationships. Yes?
How do you deal with the person to jerk or at least not
Yeah.
getting it?
The more we give, the more it inspires others to give. but the more selfish we are, the more others become selfish around us. And so those are organizations in which selfish behavior prevails, and so we see the residual effects, which is they make decisions that ultimately screw us. They destroy our economy because of their selfish behavior, right? We know this is what happens. Same in politics, right? And the answer is, don't worry about it. I know it sounds silly, and I mean, your first question is, do I talk about these things to them? I will talk to anyone who will listen, you know? But I don't talk to people who don't want to listen. The good news is, there are some good eggs, and there are some of them who've had conversions, where they were the bastards who believed in firing people and screwing people to advance their careers, and something happens. I just met a guy recently who was a very senior executive at a very, very large company, and something happened, and he got like hit in the head or something, and he realized, holy cow, I have to look after people, right? And they become obsessed with it, and they start sticking their necks out, and we just need those champions scattered around. And this is what I do. The more I spread this message, the more it's kind of like you know, in the cartoons, sort of the Hall of Justice, you know, the message goes out and they all sort of like, you know, wherever they are, like, you know, they poke their heads up. It's that kind of thing. The more we talk about it, the more we put it in our work, you know, because don't forget, you're going to help someone who goes home feeling good and their husband or their wife works in the bank. And they're going to talk how much about they love to, and that might inspire that person. You know, it has all of these residual impacts that we don't really know. This is the funny thing about the internet, which is we're so proud of the internet that we can measure everything. No, you can't. You can only measure one layer, right? So for example, you say, Simon, what's the impact you're having? I don't know is the answer, right? I know I know that it'll take more than a week and it'll take 7 years, but I don't know when it's going to happen and I don't know how it's going to get there, right? All I can do is do it, right? But I have no clue how or when. And so, for example, I can measure book sales and I can measure how many hits and I can measure how many people have watched a TED Talk and all of this, but I can't measure, you know, that TED Talk being shown to a room of 50 people, and one of those 50 people doesn't buy a book, doesn't watch a TED Talk, doesn't do anything, but goes out and does something good for somebody else. I have no way of measuring that. And so we're so proud of the internet and its ability to measure everything, but we're measuring one layer where we used to measure no layers. It's like, you know, this is how people work. It's gossamer, you know, it's networked. And so the answer is, don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. Worry about the people who you can care for, who you can give to, and when we reach a critical mass in society, it will tip, right? And if you don't believe me, the reason it is the way it is now is because it tipped the wrong way. There was no such thing as massive layoffs as business strategy prior to in the 1980s. It just wasn't done. It was done here and there, but it wasn't strategy. The idea of using layoffs to balance the books is a relatively new phenomenon that came for the increase of selfishness in the Gordon Gekko greed is good 1980s boom, right? This was also the same exact period, the 1980s, where the theory of shareholder value was put forward, right? Because they had all of these people buying large companies and installing professional managers to run the companies that they bought, that they invested in, and they had a problem, which is those professional managers were paid for by the company, and those professional managers cared for the employees and the customers. And so the investors said, how do we protect our investments? We've got an idea. We're going to give them equity in the company and bonus them based on the performance, right? And so the shift happened where the CEOs started caring more about the investors and stopped caring about the customers and the employees. Those were theories introduced by some Harvard professor in the 1980s. We can push it back the other way, right? We can push it back the other way. But we just have to, and there was just the other day, which company was it? One of the large banks where the shareholders, Citibank. Yeah, Citibank. The shareholders voted, majority shareholders voted against a fat pay package. That's unprecedented. It has never happened, even in hard times, even when the company's doing this, the shareholders it's just sort of a cursory thing where they approve the $15 million bonus for the CEO. They voted against it. It's non-binding, but it sends a shot across the bow saying shareholders now want you to be bonused if you do something good for others. Even if the others is us. All right? The point is that it's starting to crack. And so let's just stick our finger in the crack. You know? Make sure that it keeps cracking. It swung one way, we can swing it back. The question was, can I talk about celebrating accomplishment while still asking for more? Right? They did a study on kids who are really, really smart, like in all the gifted classes. Why is it when you're smart, you're gifted, and when you're stupid, you're special? Why is that? I was told my whole life I was special. It's not, never gifted. They took the gifted kids who are constantly told, you're so good. Oh, thanks for that. I knew you'd do well. Oh, you're our best employee. You're our best student. You're awesome, right? And what happens is later in life, they actually suffer because they're very afraid of taking risk, because they're very afraid of losing their position on the mantle. Okay? Kids who are sort of more average, who constantly are rewarded not for their accomplishment, but for their effort. Great effort. Really proud of the improvement you made. What they find is they do very well in life because there's no shelf, there's always more. There's more effort, right? And so you want to reward and acknowledge effort, even if they don't hit the goal. It's the delta. But at the same time, if it goes backwards, you'd be like, dude, what's going on? Like we shouldn't be giving ribbons for everyone who competes, right? Because what we're teaching people is, if you do nothing, you get a medal, right? And the funny thing is we're creating a generation that's feeling very hollow, and it's feeling, this sense of entitlement that people complain about Gen Y. The entitlement is, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything. And the funny thing is about human beings is the way we feel accomplished is when we exert energy and time and reach a destination, right? And the more energy and time that we have to suffer through, especially if we suffer together and we get somewhere, it is overwhelming. Think about the best jobs you've ever worked on. Was it the best design? Was it the best result that the company had because of your project? Or was it an absolute hell project that you worked together and you came out on the other end and that you got it done at the deadline and you're like, that was amazing? It was the hell projects. It was the things that we had to go out of our ways more, do things for each other, right? Things we weren't thinking of doing. I was wrapping packages. I was doing stuff that designers aren't supposed to do. This is what produces that, right? And so the thing is about measurement and destination reward. Imagine we're standing in a big empty room, right? And we're standing in one corner and I give you a simple instruction. I want you to go to that corner in a straight line, right? Off you go, no big deal, right? Without telling you, I slip a chair in front of you. What do? You go around the chair. Now you just disobeyed what I told you to do. I told you to go to that corner straight line. But this is the amazing things about human beings, which is when we're given a clear destination, we use our own creativity and our own sense of innovation and our own problem-solving abilities to overcome obstacles to get to the destination. In other words, the destination is more important than the route, right? We're flexible about the route. We're obsessed with the destination. Reset. We're standing in the corner together and I give you a simple instruction. Go somewhere in this room in a straight line. And you say to me, well, where do you want me to go? I'm like, I don't know. You're smart, figure it out. Go in a straight line. And so you pick a point and you start walking. And without telling you, I put a chair in front of you. And what do? You come to a grinding halt. And I say, what did you stop for? You go, well, you put a chair in front of me. Or you'll make a sudden turn and go in another direction, right? And this is the problem. It's the same obstacle. The difference is when you have a clear destination, the obstacles become easy to overcome. When you don't have a clear destination, you keep coming to a grinding halt. And what we do in our companies is we're counting the steps we're taking along the route, but we're never looking at the destination, right? So a company says, made $1 million this year, we were only planning on making 800,000. Like we took 10 steps, we're only planning on taking 8. Where are you going? No clue, right? We count the steps. And so the point is that people want to feel that the effort that they're exerting actually are moving somewhere. And so successful measurement, successful recognition is not just for the steps you take. It's not just for the effort. It's that the effort you exerted moved us closer to where we're trying to get to. And that get to should be some crazy ideal. My ideal is to live in a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning, inspired to go to work and fulfilled by the work that they do. And the couple of measurements that I use are if the book is selling, and by the way, people ask me, how many have you sold? I have no clue. I've never asked the publisher because I don't care. I really don't care how many I've sold. What I care about is the Amazon rankings and that those are going steady or up and not plummeting, because that means other people, right? Because I don't have a publicist, I don't have a marketing strategy on purpose. I didn't hire one of those companies to sell the book for me. And the reason is because I'm not interested in book sales. I'm interested in the spreading of an idea. And so I just use that as a metric to help me understand, am I sort of marching because the more I preach, is it resonating? And so you have a couple of these imperfect measurements, that help you understand, are you going along the way? So it's not just great effort, look what you achieved, because that's what we're doing now, right? Our goal is to increase top line revenues by $50 million. For what reason, right? Which is, we have to know the destination, and then we say, amazing, you took us that much closer. And if we go to the right, it's because we were overcoming an obstacle. If we hadn't gone to the right, we would have been stuck forever. Thank you. You know? It's not always straight lines. It's not always straight lines. But it's in one direction. She's pulling the cane out. Thank you very, very much.